Welcome to this webinar on tuning up your organization for 2021. It will focus on how to assess your organization's current work and eliminate bottlenecks to get important work done with greater ease. I'm Mark Robison, Senior Consultant with Humane Network and co-host of the Shelter Success Simplified podcast. Our two presenters today are Bonnie Brown and Diane Blankenberg, founders of Humane Network. Humane Network is a nonprofit consulting organization that can help your organization with everything from animal behavior training and fundraising to operations and strategic planning. You can also outsource some of your work to us, such as fundraising and communications. The first conversation with us is free, so don't hesitate to reach out at info@humanenetwork.org. You can check out Bonnie and Diane's bios on the Humane Network website and see the rest of the team there too. So you can ask questions at any time in the chat window at the bottom of the Zoom window and ask them as they come to mind, and we'll get to them at the end of the presentation, the main presentation. And so now I will turn things over to Bonnie and Diane.
Well, hi, welcome, as Mark said, to the presentation on tuning up your organization. This is actually the first part of a two-part session. The second part will be next week. So I'm Diane Blankenberg, the CEO for Humane Network.
And I'm Bonnie Brown, the president of Humane Network.
So we're really glad you can join us again today, or for the first time if you weren't with us in the past 2 weeks. So as Mark said, we're going to cover how to assess your organization's current work and identify bottlenecks, and how to create effective and efficient processes. And I mentioned that next week would be the second part, where we'll look at creating a united team and effective leadership strategies. So we're going to look at three particular strategies or ways to tune up your organization today. The first one is about using an organizational self-assessment chart. The second is using walkthroughs and management by walking around. And the third is elimination of bottlenecks and long, unproductive meetings. And then we'll also suggest some specific steps that can help you and your organization be more effective with hopefully less friction and less stress. So the first strategy or way to tune up your organization is to assess your organization using this particular tool. There's certainly a lot of tools out there, but this is one that we have used and think it works really well. And it works well from both an organization point of view and also an individual point of view. So we're going to talk about it kind of based on both of those perspectives. But first, we want to get clear on what the chart is actually representing. So on the left-hand side, you see an arrow with the word vision at the bottom, and it goes from obviously the bottom to the top. A vision is a clear, comprehensive image of an organization at some point in the future. It's what does it look like? Where do you want to go? It provides direction because it describes what the organization needs to be like to be successful in the future. So vision would mean that the arrow that represents vision would mean that has a clear sense of the organization's vision is lower at the bottom versus the top. So we want to be sure that we are clear, and we're going to go through a little, allow you to go through a little self-assessment of your organization in just a minute, but just be sure that means you understand that at the bottom means the vision is not as clear, and at the top it means it is very clear. The horizontal line or arrow at the bottom says action, and this is the axis that helps you understand how much the organization or an individual is actually inspiring people to specific action. And increases, as I said, from left to right here. So let's look at the four quadrants specifically. And in the lower left-hand corner, you had what was called the bystander. And this is somebody that really is present but not really involved. And I'm sure we all know folks that fit into this category, or organizations that are maybe in this category also. The top left, which was low action and high vision, was called the dreamer. And this is a person or organization that has the vision, but lacks the ability to really inspire and people to action. So they've got great ideas and great vision, but not a lot is happening. The lower right corner was what we call a doer. So that was low on vision and high on inspiring to action. So obviously a doer really gets a lot of things done. But the more connected they are to the vision, the more then that can turn into more effective or being more effective for actually accomplishing what the organization is setting out to accomplish. And the top right quadrant, we call the achiever. And this is somebody who, or an organization that truly lives and models their vision regularly, and then also is able to inspire others to action and specifically accomplishing or realizing that particular mission. All of us fall somewhere on these two scales. And we're going to be having you all do a little exercise in a bit where you think about where your organization is as a whole, but as individuals too, that we can use this to kind of assess our own leadership qualities. As I mentioned earlier, it's useful for individuals and organizations. But we want to ask you to pause for a few minutes or seconds and ask yourself two questions. Where do you think your organization falls on the vision scale? Does your organization have a clear and inspiring vision? Think about where you fall on that line from the bottom to the top. And then ask yourself, how does your organization accomplish these things, or how well do they accomplish these things? To what degree is that true that they're able to accomplish tasks? And where would you fall on that particular scale on the action in the bottom? And where these two points intersect, that is where your organization is as far as your own assessment of its ability to be clear in its vision and inspire others to action. So remember that, and we're going to have a little poll in a second, but I just wanted to make a couple other comments. An organization can be very busy, and so can individuals, but they can be doing a lot, but not necessarily doing the right things that's moving you or your organization to the right point. That would obviously be a doer. It also can have a super lofty goals and great vision that are very impressive and certainly valid, but they're not actually doing much to fulfill your mission. And so such an organization would be in the dreamer category. So the best case scenario is you want your organization to really have a clear sense of what you want to achieve and where you want to go, and then is very effective in being able to do the work that will help you get there. So hopefully you've thought about where your organization falls in each of these four quadrants, and we are going to do a poll to see where everybody stands.
Where do you feel your organization currently is on the chart? Bystanders came in at 8%, dreamers 8%. Our doers are our largest category at 58%. Achievers logged in at 17%, and not sure is 8%.
Great. Well, it's not surprising that doer was the largest category. I think it's the easiest, and I also think that in our field we tend to be much more reactive than maybe proactive. So, and certainly there's never a lack of people, lack of commitment and work ethic, but not necessarily, it sounds like, moving towards a specific clear vision. So you can use this tool also to do a little exercise with your team. And you can ask them to do the same thing that you've done and plot where they think the organization is on this particular chart, what quadrant they think it would fall into. And then you can talk together about how you can more successfully move your organization into the achiever quadrant, or if you're already there, how can you elevate the efforts even more and make sure that even more people are inspired and the organization's even more effective. So if you need other help on how to implement some of these exercises or some of the suggestions we make throughout here, please don't hesitate to ask, and we'll be glad to talk to you offline. So hopefully this is a useful tool or way that you can tune up your organization. And now we're going to go to the second strategy for tuning up your organization, and I'm going to let Bonnie talk about that.
Okay, welcome everyone. The second strategy we want to talk about are walkthroughs. And there are two types of walkthroughs that we're going to talk about today. The first one would be a walkthrough with a purpose, and the second one is a management strategy called Management by Walking Around. You may have heard people talk about MBWA, that's short for Management by Walking Around. And the two different, so these are really definitely two very different things that you might want to consider adopting. And we realize that some of you who are participating today, you may not have a facility. And if that describes your group, that's okay. Just think about the concepts that we're sharing and how you might be able to apply them to your organization without a physical space. So, you know, as a manager or an executive, you still have a responsibility to make sure the organization is running well, and think about how you could apply these things if you don't have a physical facility, because there are some ways, and we're always happy to talk with you about it, you know, separately outside the session today or as part of the question and answer piece. Anyway, so then on to the next slide. We are going to do another quick poll with you, and I'd like you to think about how often you deliberately walk through your facility and observe and talk with people. So we're not talking about how often you get up from your desk and walk to the dog area or the clinic. We're really talking about how often you deliberately walk through the facility. So is it once a week or more often, 2 to 3 times a month, maybe about once a month, maybe less than a month, or maybe it's just not applicable because you don't have a facility. Okay, so we have the results here, and they're really pretty impressive because 61% of you are already walking through the facility once a week or even more often. About 9% say 2 to 3 times a month. That's pretty good. About 13% say about once a month, and only 13% are doing it less than once a month. 4% it's not applicable. So that's pretty good. And I hope that what I have to share with you will help you be even more effective with the time that you spend walking through your facility. So we're going to start by talking about walkthroughs with a purpose. And there are different reasons why you might walk through with a purpose. One might be, say, a maintenance tune-up. Maybe you do this periodically, or maybe you just feel a special need to do it. So you might get together with whoever's taking care of your facility, if you have a maintenance staff or a volunteer that does that, and maybe your operations manager or shelter manager, and you walk through the facility. But another reason might be if you're having a really important visitor, or say a public tour is scheduled, and you just want to be sure everything's really tight and looks as you would want it to for the visitors who are coming. So those are just a couple of the reasons that you might do a walkthrough with a purpose. Here, you know, there could be all kinds of reasons, like maybe determining use of space for the organization as things evolve. But anyway, here's a few tips for your walkthroughs with a purpose. The first thing you want to do is put yourself in the right mindset. You just want to take a moment and put yourself in a place where you're looking at the facility as a visitor, seeing it for the first time might see it. And that's really important because, you know, we see the facility very often and it's real easy to tune out stuff. So you want to take a moment, put yourself in the right mindset. And then you want to really start in your parking lot because you want to see what a visitor might see. So you look around the parking lot, take a look at the signage, walk through the entry door, and walk through the entire building slowly and deliberately. And you want to focus on both your overall impressions and the details. So for example, an overall impression might be that the staff is really friendly. You see people having friendly interactions. They greet you as you walk through the facility. And you may have a sense that the shelter is really organized or really looks really neat. But then you also want to be taking a moment to look for details. So that would be things like fingerprints on the front of the door, or before you enter the door, the trash can that's overloaded with poop bags that needs to be emptied. So you just want to look both for details and the big picture impressions that are created as you walk through. And as I mentioned, you definitely want to bring along a couple of members of your team, because it's both getting everyone on the same page, training people, getting everyone to see the issues, and folks might spot things that you don't spot. So definitely bring along team members with you. And you definitely also want to take notes while you're doing a walkthrough with a purpose. You or someone on the walkthrough needs to be taking notes, and they need to be followed up on to be sure that solutions are, they're coming up with solutions for all of the potential issues or even great things that you might happen to spot, so you can let people know. One shelter director I know said that she uses her phone on walkthroughs, and she takes pictures of anything she's concerned about, and she immediately texts it to the person responsible so they can really see exactly what it is that she's concerned about. And that can be a great strategy. So we're just going to take a quick look at these photos. They are from real shelter walkthroughs that we've done over the years with management at other various facilities. And the thing about a walkthrough is that it really gives you that opportunity to see your facility with fresh eyes. You really want to experience it the way a visitor would, because just in that rush of daily activity, it's so easy to overlook issues. We just push those things into the background because we're busy. So you can overlook the trash blowing around the parking lot, or the dog pee outside the front door, or the hole in the wall that's been there for as long as anyone can remember. And again, here are some more real life photos from shelter walkthroughs, and you can see how it must be easy for the people working in the facility where these signs are hanging to overlook them, to not notice that maybe the content isn't really appropriate, or that the sign is now illegible and crumpled up. It's really easy to, one day someone puts a pile of stuff there and they're going to move it, but pretty soon this area has become a dumping ground and there's just clutter there everywhere, and everyone just overlooks it because that's the dumping ground place. And it's really easy for that to happen. Or, built up dirt and grime, like in the lower right-hand photo. So that's what these kinds of walkthroughs with a purpose are for, to give you a chance to really take a look, and for your team members to help you, a couple of team members who you want to engage, and it's a great part of a mentoring activity with your team too. We have a checklist that we'll share with you that can be helpful if you're going to undertake walkthroughs with a purpose. And we also have some literature on the next thing I'm going to talk about, which is management by walking around. So we'll be sending you 2 documents associated with this part of the presentation on Friday that you can share with your team, or hopefully you'll find to be helpful. So the next strategy that involves walkthroughs is management by walking around. And it has a lot of benefits for an organization. First, it really enables you to build relationships with your team, and it makes you more accessible to staff and volunteers. So already you can see that the purpose of this walkthrough is very different than the others. You'll learn about problems, of course, as you're walking through, and you'll also hopefully discover some really cool things that are happening. Walkthroughs that are part of management by walking around gives you an opportunity to hear team members' ideas. It also gives you an opportunity to show interest and appreciation in their work. And it really gives you a sense that you have a grasp of what's going on in your organization because you've seen it with your own eyes, you have that firsthand knowledge. So, and lastly, similarly to a walkthrough that you might conduct for a specific purpose, you're getting that experience of a visitor when you walk through as part of MBWA. So if you'd like to try management by walking around, we have a few tips to offer you that will help you be more successful with it. You want to make your MBWA walks ongoing, but not routine, not regular. In other words, people shouldn't be able to predict when you're going to be coming through. So you want to schedule them different days of the week and different times of day, not only so everyone just doesn't expect you at a set time, but also so that you can see different team members at work at different tasks. You want to schedule a time though, and that means planning when you're going to do them and putting it in your calendar so that the time just doesn't get eaten up. It's really easy to never have time to actually do the walkthrough. So you want to be sure it's in your schedule. And unlike walkthroughs that you might do with a purpose, you want to go these alone. And part of the reason is because it gives you a chance to better connect with your team, to make a one-on-one connection with people along the way. And you want to engage the folks that you meet. You certainly want to be saying hello to people while you're doing a walkthrough with a purpose, but this walkthrough is different. You really want to connect with people. You really want to see your team in action. Of course, it's best to keep the conversations informal. It's great to seek input. You know, when you're seeing people doing things, you can inquire about what they're doing, how it's going, if there's anything they need that would make their work more effective or easier. So certainly engaging with folks is a two-way street, but you want to be sure that you're listening more than you're talking. And you also want to be sure that you're not criticizing. Now, of course, if you're walking through and you happen to witness some sort of unprecedented crisis, yes, you want to help out and you may need to intercede. But normally, the object of management by walking around is not to, catch people doing things wrong or to criticize what they're doing. It's not about correcting people. You want to acknowledge good work if you see good things happening. It's always really nice to say so. And it is a good time to share your passion and the goals for the organization. You want to remain upbeat and you want to be sure that you're modeling the kind of professional behavior that you would like to see in your team. So those are a few things to keep in mind. And two more actually. When you walk through, it's important over time that you are spending equal time in the different departments. Of course, one walkthrough may be different than another, and you may spend more time in one area than another at different points in time. But if staff notices that you're consistently spending 20 minutes in the dog area, for example, and only 5 minutes in all the other areas, people will notice that. And unfortunately, they can make assumptions about that. Maybe that department has a lot of problems or that you prefer that department. So you want to be sure that over time, you're being very equal in your attention when you do your walkthroughs because people will be noticing what you are doing. And then the last one is to follow up. When you're done with the walkthrough, it's great to go to your office or grab your notebook and write down any specific concerns you had and great things that you saw. And then you want to follow up on those with people who will find that information helpful and be able to make changes. And then as you see positive developments, it's a great opportunity to get back to those folks and say, that's great. It's looking great when I come through now. So anyway, that's it. A few tips to help you out with these two strategies. And as I said, we'll be sending you 2 documents that will have some more information and hopefully be helpful too.
Alrighty, so I think you're turning it back over to me now, and we're going to talk about the third strategy for tuning up your organization. And that is eliminating bottlenecks and time wasting meetings. I'm sure probably a lot of you perk up for this one. I know that it's it's a common problem, both of these, in not just our field, but in any organization. But there are some things you can do to help minimize, at least, if not eliminate, these. So we're going to start with bottlenecks, and because this is just really a great way to be able to increase the level of effort of getting work done. And also,
Ian, you might want to switch the slide. Sorry.
oops, thank you, sorry. Obviously having a challenge doing two things at once, huh? So yes, as I said, a bottleneck or eliminating bottlenecks rather, is a great way to improve the level of effort in getting things done, but also to do it with greater ease and less frustration. So what is a bottleneck? It's one step in a process where limited capacity reduces the capacity of the whole chain. So that's just a fancy way of saying it's where things get stuck, where the movement or flow through your shelter or your organization is either greatly slowed down or even stopped in some cases. Common signs of a bottleneck are listed here, but I'm sure that everybody's experienced some of these, if not all of these, at some level. And again, I think this applies to all organization, but you may be waiting on something for a while. There's delays or backlogs as different departments or parts of an organization try to get caught up, or maybe you just function behind all the time. And certainly it creates stress. So if you see stress, this can be a sign of the frustration that comes from some of these bottlenecks. So we're going to do another survey, or poll rather. And do you or others in your organization experience bottlenecks or delays in getting things done? Often, sometimes, rarely, or never.
So out of the poll, do you or others in your organization experience bottlenecks or delays in getting things done? We had 32% of the respondents say often. 61% was the largest category, and it is sometimes. And rarely is 7%, with 0% reporting they never have bottlenecks.
Oh, well, that's interesting that 0 say never, which is not surprising. And over 90% are in the often or sometimes. So it is normal for this to happen. But I think what's maybe not normal, and what we might be able to help you with some today is how to get through those and how to minimize them. So bottlenecks happen for a lot of reasons, but here's two in particular. It's where a person or a team or a department is on the critical overall path, but they just can't keep up with the volume that they have. So that can apply to almost any aspect of an organization. But another way they get created too is a process or policy that is either outdated or just wasn't really appropriate or effective to begin with. So it's either never was serving the organization, or it's no longer serving the organization. So you really want to be able to eliminate these bottlenecks as best you can. I'm sure all of you that are at least in my age group, which is older, maybe some of the younger remember this particular I Love Lucy segment, but I always think of this when I'm doing process work. And the first thing you need to do in order to eliminate bottlenecks is to be able to identify them. And then once you identify them, you just want to keep asking why over and over until you kind of really get to the root problem of what's causing the delay. We often, I think, are quick to assume the answer to this and assume the reason behind it. But it really takes some specific directed analysis in order to be sure that you're looking at the true root cause, and there can be more than one cause. So you may not be able to solve all the issues, but if you can focus on the ones that are kind of causing or contributing it to the most or the highest level, then you're going to help reduce them the most that you can. The third step is to make strategic changes, and this is by devising a better process, or in some cases just eliminating pieces of the process. This is a very simplistic sample flow chart here. I don't know how many of you are familiar with flow charts. I actually have a software engineering background, so it's something that we had to do regularly, and I kind of think this way, but not everybody does. But if you can do a flow, and often this is easier to do with a team. So bring in kind of the key players that have the knowledge of a particular process that you're looking at, and chart the flow of that process together. And I can give you personally help on this if this is something you're interested in doing on your own or facilitating it with your team. But once you flow it, then you're able to really identify where those specific bottlenecks are, or even sometimes it's just eliminating duplication of effort, or some steps or just don't even need to be there at all. So you want to be able to, like I say, flow through your current process and then develop a new process that's going to be more effective and eliminate the bottlenecks that you have identified earlier. Here's another sample, a more complex flow chart, and it just allows you to get an example of what one would look like. That's really related more to a business situation. This is the hiring process. It not only helps you better understand your processes, but it also can be used as a training tool. Once you have the new process defined and you're comfortable with that it's effective and going to really serve your organization well, and is usable, then like I said, you can use it to train new employees as they come on board, or even volunteers if they're working in the same capacity. So one thing to consider, or several things rather, to consider when you're looking at creating a new process that hopefully is minus bottlenecks, is to be sure you're utilizing technology. That is certainly something that can help speed up a process, and it can help it be more effective in the end, but you need to utilize technology appropriately. So a tool is only as good as the process itself. And so you want to be sure that it really is meeting your needs, so that it is helping, not hindering. You can also reduce inputs or what I'd call pauses or conversations. So an example might be that you train staff to make more decisions on their own, so that they don't have to go to management or somebody else to get approval for certain things. Be sure that you are using best practices, because obviously a lot of what we do is not new. In fact, most of it is not new. So there are organizations, and there are that have kind of mastered ways of doing certain things. There are organizations that not only shelters, but just maybe associations that have documented what is considered best practices across this industry. So just be sure you're keeping up with those, and that you are really applying the ones that are a good fit to your organization that can help you be more effective. Another thing is to provide training. If you have a slowdown anywhere, maybe it's that you're not getting spay neuters done as fast as you need, and therefore there's a bottleneck of animals that aren't ready for adoption. So maybe training your veterinary team to do more high volume spay neuter could help. And there's certainly a lot of other situations where training obviously will help increase the flow and eliminate bottlenecks. And then there's the staff, and I think this I know was in my pre-animal welfare world. We tended to feel like if you had a problem and weren't getting things done, you just put more people on it. So that often is not the answer. It could be, but it should be done as a deliberate action, not just to put more people on it to put more people on it. So in general, you want to be sure that you've considered other solutions, and especially when putting more people on it sometimes is not even an option or is financially limiting. But if you are going to put more people onto a process, be sure you're finding the right help, the right skilled help, And again, you don't necessarily have the budget to be able to go hire more people. So therefore we have to look kind of within, or look for ways that are more affordable. So the first thing you want to do is to ask your current supporter base and volunteers, and looking for specific skills that can help. I know most organizations, when they're having volunteers apply, they ask for areas that they have expertise in or that they would want to help. But I wouldn't hesitate to reach out, even if people haven't indicated, because you never know, and you never know who they know that might be able to help. So that's the first place to go. And then you can look at other organizations that are listed here that exist and to provide help. SCORE is an organization in most communities that can provide expert mentorship. There's Catch a Fire that you can get professional volunteer help, Volunteer Match to specifically open up volunteer opportunities in general, and Handshake. I don't know if you can read that there, but Handshake is another website where you can find interns that can help you. Mostly they're college students and recent grads. We know, Bonnie and I know some folks that have both used Catch a Fire and Handshake successfully to help supplement their staffing requirements. So here's some other things to consider when you're trying to prevent bottlenecks. Be sure that you have really clear guidelines for how to make decisions, so that staff, they aren't floundering, or if they need to go to somebody, they know who they need to go to. This list on the right are 4 things that Bonnie and I put together back when we were at Nevada Humane Society that were kind of our guiding principles and really helped in making decisions. So whenever we were considering things, we always wanted to be sure that we were accommodating these 4 guidelines to create, that we were creating life-saving solutions for animals, that were involving the community in our work, that we're delivering quality customer service, and that we're providing excellent care to the animals. So you can use something like this or create your own, but also it needs to be communicated, as we talked last week, when we have goals and mission and vision. I mean, be sure that the organization and the members of the organization really understand these and use them in their day-to-day decision making. Another thing is to have really clear job descriptions that documents the roles and responsibilities of individuals. And even if you have volunteers in some of your positions, job descriptions still apply. So you want to be sure that everybody is clear on what they are supposed to be doing, but also that others are clear, and that they're clear on the connections between different roles and different departments, which leads into the third one, which is having a good internal communication strategies and methods and tools, so that you can be sure that you're communicating effectively and you're having productive meetings. We worked with a client recently that had implemented at almost every kind of major tool out there that allowed for teams to communicate and track their tasks, but they had so many that nobody knew which ones for sure to use, and some used some and some used others and some used none. So you want to really pick something and stick with it that's going to work well for your particular organization and the makeup of your particular team. So we're going to do another poll here, but first I'm going to turn it over to Bonnie, who is going to talk about unproductive meetings.
Yeah, so we are in the last segment of the presentation here, and then we'll get to your questions. But to kick that off, we have a poll for you. Do you or others in your organization experience long or unproductive meetings? Often, sometimes, rarely, or never? Okay, so here are the results. Often, 21%, sometimes is the largest number, 52%, rarely, 24%, and 3% never. So that's really great. The folks who are never, that's wonderful accomplishment. Congratulations. Most people do experience them sometimes. So we have some advice for you. here that we'll share. So here's some advice if you chair meetings that can help you create more productive meetings. And the first one is starting and ending on time. It sounds really simple, but it can be harder than you think. Yet that really is the job of the meeting chair. So if you tell everyone that you're now going to start and end on time, that's what you can do as the chair. Just begin to enforce that and it will improve your meetings right away. Create an agenda in advance that has start and end times for each of the items on the agenda. And that helps you as the chair to keep the meeting on track. If something needs more time, it could be discussed outside the meeting with the people who really need to be part of that, or it could go on a future meeting agenda. You want to draw people out who don't speak up. Sometimes just a few people dominate the meeting, but a good chair will be asking for input from the quieter people as well. The chair of the meeting can win a lot of kudos from their team by sharing the credit and also accepting responsibility. So when there's an issue, that person is willing to shoulder some of the responsibility. And when something good happens, they share the credit with the whole team. Another thing that a skilled chairperson can do to make sure that your meetings are productive is document the action items. And if you as the chair can't do that, assign someone in the room to document each action item. And then at the end of the meeting, you want to review those together with everybody and follow up to make sure that they happen after the meeting. And a tool that can really help you keep the meeting on track and on time is a parking lot. You can just have a whiteboard that's designated for this and then take a picture of it at the end of the meeting, or you could have a flip chart, or someone could just take notes where you put things into something called a parking lot for topics that come up that you might want to follow up on later, but you're not going to follow up right now in this meeting. And some of the best advice for chairing meetings comes from Gretchen Rubin with Happiness Project. And she says the meeting chair should be cheerfully and personally decisive. And she's highlighting an issue there where often the meeting chair is reluctant to be decisive. So she's telling you a nice way to do that. So next, meetings, much as many people complain that they have too many meetings and they're too long and they don't accomplish anything, if they are well run, are a really important part of your internal communication plan. And so we have a few suggested meetings here that organizations we work with have found to be very effective for them. And one of them are weekly managers meetings. They might be every other week. Can we go back, Dan? Sorry. Weekly or every other week. It doesn't like that slide for some reason. And that can really help you unify your management team or leadership team and get everyone on the same page. Stand-up meetings, they can be really quick, like 15 minutes or less. And those could be weekly or twice weekly. They work really well for small teams, or maybe for your whole animal care team or the adoption team or the clinic. You know, that groups of small groups can meet periodically. If you have a shelter or facility that's open 7 days a week, you probably need to do these more than once a week so that information is conveyed across the team. All staff meetings are really important for getting the whole team together and on the same page. Twice a year is probably sufficient. And those are going to be highly structured, planned meetings that you probably include a nice presentation from the CEO. Yes, it might include some engagement activities with everyone, but it's really a well-planned meeting that's supposed to unify everyone and create a sense of enthusiasm about the work you've accomplished and the work you're about to undertake. And of course, supervisor one-on-one meetings with direct reports are really important. It's not okay just to communicate with your employees once a year or twice a year in some sort of formal performance review process. People really need to hear how they're doing often and ongoing, and given an opportunity to make changes, and also to give them a pat on the back. So, meeting monthly or more often, maybe just 20 minutes or so with each employee is a great goal for a supervisor. And of course, you need to have volunteer meetings too. When we have two examples of meetings that might work with the volunteers, these would be in addition to, of course, training or onboarding that you might be doing for volunteers. It's keeping in touch with your existing volunteers. It can really help with retention, to be in communication with them periodically. And just like with staff, a couple of times a year, you want to get everyone together and try to create that team spirit. And these things can be done virtually if that's the best way to operate right now during the pandemic. So we have one last piece of advice for you for meetings, and that's to consider Martha's Rules. We're going to send you a handout on Martha's Rules. We're not going to take the time to go through it today, but it is a strategy that can make board meetings a lot more efficient and effective. It's an alternative to the more traditional Roberts Rules, and it's a lot easier for everyone to grasp how it works, and can definitely speed up board meetings. So if that's a challenge for you, you can take a look at that document when it comes, or as Diane has said, we're always happy to talk with you about how to create more effective board meetings. But there's an element of Martha's Rules that I guess I'm calling here Martha's polling, and that's the use of the thumbs up, thumbs across, and thumbs down polling strategy in meetings. It can be really great for taking the pulse of a team, or for team decision making when a consensus decision is really important. So that too is included in the handout. We'll send you more on that. But those are just two more things you can try that can make your meetings go quicker and be more effective. So to review, today we went over the organizational self-assessment chart. We talked about two different types of walkthroughs that you might adopt. And we talked about how to eliminate bottlenecks and how to create more productive, shorter meetings for your team. Next week, we have part 2 of this webinar series on tuning up your organization. And we'll talk about how to increase the effectiveness of your board, and really importantly, how to create a unified team. And then the last 2 webinars in this series are about powering your journey. And we're going to talk about how to raise needed funds and how to increase public engagement in your organization. So we really want to thank the Petco Foundation. They made this webinar series possible. They have a wonderful lost and found pet initiative that they've undertaken, and you can check it out and learn more about that at the link provided. And now I'm going to hand things over to my colleague, Mark, so we can address some of your questions.
So now is the time for the Q&A portion. If you've got any questions, ask them in the chat window. And we'll start with a question of what topics are best for the stand-up meetings?
So to me, now, people use those meetings in all sorts of creative ways. So I certainly wouldn't say it was limited to this, but organizations we've seen use them effectively would say have a stand-up meeting for the entire animal care team every Monday and Thursday for 15 minutes at 9 a.m. before the doors open to the public, for example. So it's a chance for the team to touch base, for management to share anything they want to get across to everybody. Sometimes smaller teams do this as well. Say, for example, your dog care department could have a stand-up meeting. Now, maybe you're open 7 days a week, so they want to do it twice a week, but maybe you're only open 5 and once a week is sufficient. And they just talk about the business of the department. It's a chance both for staff to share questions, concerns, good things that they saw. One of the strategies we discovered at Nevada Humane Society that really helped improve our managers' meetings was talking about one good thing at the beginning of the managers meeting, and everyone had to find one good thing, because one thing everyone or many people in this field are good at is noticing the problems or spotting the difficulties. And so, to encourage your team, whether it's in a 15-minute meeting to have someone share something good, or in a longer meeting to have each department sharing something good, can be a really good strategy too. But in general, I think they're great for the team touching base, especially at the start of the day or the start of the work week, to get everyone off in the same direction. Diane may have other ideas.
You can also use it for recognition. Sometimes just to give a shout out to the team as a whole, or to individuals that have excelled in some particular way. And also to bring up, any particular bits of, like Bonnie said, the business, but things specifically that they need to know that week. Like you might be offering a particular adoption promotion, or you might have some particular visitors come in the shelter. So just kind of a informational shout out too.
Okay, and so next question is, who should be the chair of the meeting? Is that always the executive director, or is that always somebody else?
I think it would depend on the meeting. Do you want to talk about that, Diane? Who should
I
be?
think if it's a specific, like a specific department, or like Bonnie was talking about manager meetings, then I think it's appropriate for whoever leads that group to run that particular meeting. If it's a meeting that's has a different kind of purpose, and you might have, I'm trying to think of an example, but it might just be a specially called meeting on a particular topic that you might then have some special guest experts or somebody that's in your particular organization that has that kind of knowledge to run it. It also could be, if you're trying to work through something like creating a strategic plan or defining goals, you sometimes even use a kind of third party or an unbiased facilitator, somebody from outside the organization that can help you move the process along, and so that everybody can participate in it, because it's sometimes kind of hard to participate in team activities when you're also trying to lead the meeting. So like Bonnie said, it depends on do you want to add to that, Bonnie?
No, absolutely. I just think it depends on the meeting. If you were having a department meeting, it probably makes sense for the department head. If it's an adoption team meeting, maybe if you have an adoption manager or a shelter manager, maybe that's the person leading that meeting. But, it totally depends, because you could be mentoring someone, or, there are all kinds of reasons why different people other than certainly the CEO would be leading the meetings.
Okay, how can you tell if you are the bottleneck? And what strategies might you have if you are the bottleneck?
So, I think the processes to finding that out are the same, and it's working with the team of people and being open to listening to people, because it's really hard to hear that you're the bottleneck as a person who can be the bottleneck. I know that. So, but you need to be open to hearing it and invite that and look for solutions. Diane might have some other pearls of wisdom to share on that. What do you do when you're the bottleneck?
Well, I think the first step is that you've recognized it, obviously, if you know you are. So that was the first step that we talked about earlier, is identifying. But I think then maybe if you are, like Bonnie said, open to feedback, is to ask your team what you can do to make it better for them, and listen to them, like Bonnie said. So getting that direct input.
And then following up with a solution, which can be challenging, but some of those groups that Diane mentioned, like SCORE, can be, provide great mentors for people. And we're always happy to help you too if you need help working through a process where you think you're the bottleneck.
Okay, well, I think that does it for all of our questions. And so We appreciate the time that you took to join us for today's webinar. If you didn't get a chance to ask a question or you think of one later, feel free to email us at info@humanenetwork.org. And on Friday, I will send you a link to this recording that you can share with others. And it'll also have the additional resource documents that Bonnie mentioned. And so part 2 of the Tune Up Your Organization webinar will be next week, 1 week from today at the same time. And this webinar was supported by the Petco Foundation and presented by Humane Network. If you'd like to know about future webinars, be sure to sign up for the Shelter Success Simplified e-newsletter at the bottom of every page on our website at humanenetwork.org. And finally, thank you for all the work you do helping animals.
Yes, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks again. Bye-bye.